In December 2022, we were all promised like this massive revolution that was supposed to finally give us our time back. You remember the headline?
Absolutely, the 4-day work week.
Right, the 4-day work week powered by artificial intelligence. The whole pitch was so simple. It was these new tools are going to take all the drudgery off our plates.
Yeah, that was the dream.
Exactly. Suddenly, a task that took all day was going to take an hour. You press a button, you get your life back, and the machines just do all the heavy lifting.
I mean, it sounded great on paper.
It did. But if you look around a modern white-collar office today, or honestly, if you just look at your own calendar right now, we are living in a completely different, frankly maddening reality.
It's totally chaotic.
It really is. Exception keys are up, calendars are overflowing, and white-collar burnout is hitting these historic, unprecedented highs.
Yeah.
So, the robots didn't take our jobs. They just seem to have broken our workflows completely.
It really is the defining operational paradox of this decade. I mean, the technology itself is accelerating at just this breakneck pace, right?
Yeah.
And it's doing exactly what it promised in terms of raw capability. Like, agents can draft, they can code, they can summarize hundreds of pages in, seconds.
Yeah, the raw power is there.
Exactly. And yet, the human beings operating this technology are somehow drowning more than they were 5 years ago. It's wild.
And that exact paradox is what we are dissecting in today's deep dive. We're looking at a stack of sources today that, honestly, it completely flips the script on how you should be thinking about AI, your daily job, and really the entire structure of your company.
It's a fundamental shift.
It is, and leading this stack is India's Economic Survey 2025-26. Which is waving this massive data-backed red flag about the global IT sector.
Right.
And we are combining that survey with some elite founder-grade operational strategy blueprints. So the mission for this deep dive is clear. We're going to figure out exactly why the modern back office is melting down, and more importantly, we're going to walk through the exact step-by-step mechanism to actually fix it.
Yeah, and to do that, we have to start by completely resetting our mental model of what is actually happening out there.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So the central thesis of our sources is that we are not facing this AI-led job apocalypse in the traditional sense.
Right, because when people hear job apocalypse, they picture that the cinematic version.
Exactly. They picture robots physically marching into an office and unplugging your computer.
The Terminator in a cubicle.
Exactly. But that's not what is happening at all. What we're actually experiencing is the silent structural collapse of outdated work design.
Structural collapse.
Yeah, because, the surface of the company looks exactly the same, the org chart looks the same, the job titles are the same. But the underlying mechanics of how work actually gets done are just buckling under the pressure of this new technology.
I want to really dig into that concept of silent collapse because it sounds terrifying but also incredibly subtle. Let's look at the macro warning first to ground this in some reality.
Good idea.
So the Economic Survey 2025-26 from India, it's this massive, incredibly dense economic document. And it pushes back hard against the idea of an overnight job wipeout, but it warns of this phenomenon it calls a quiet drift.
Yes, the quiet drift.
Walk us through what that actually looks like in the data, because it's fascinating.
Well, the survey uses a very specific sector to prove this fundamental shift. They focus on the U.S. professional, business, and information services sector.
Okay, so that's often abbreviated as the PBIS sector.
Yes? Right, PBIS. And this is essentially the engine room of the modern service economy. It encompasses, everything from IT consulting and accounting to legal services and basic digital ops.
Got it.
And the survey uses this U.S. sector as a lead indicator for a very specific reason. The U.S. adopted generative AI earliest and most aggressively, right?
Right, we were the guinea pigs.
Exactly. And this specific U.S. sector structurally mirrors India's massive services-heavy economy. So they're looking at it very closely.
So they're basically looking at the U.S. PBIS sector as a crystal ball for what's going to happen globally to, anyone who works at a computer.
Precisely. And they pinpoint the sharp mathematical shift that began almost immediately after December 2022.
Which is exactly when the world woke up to generative AI, ChatGPT, and all that.
Yes, exactly. Now, historically, the relationship between a company's output and its headcount was, it was linear. So if a massive IT services firm wanted to increase their output, say they wanted to handle 20% more client accounts or process 20% more data, they had to hire roughly 20% more people.
Because it's a one-to-one scaling model. You just throw human labor at volume-based problems.
Exactly. But Post-2022, the survey identifies what they call a weakened marginal responsiveness.
Okay, let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
Because weakened marginal responsiveness is a very heavy piece of economic jargon.
It is a bit dry, yeah.
Translate that into like plain English for someone who's running a department right now. What does that actually mean?
So in plain English, it means that GDP and output growth have officially decoupled from job creation.
Decoupled, wow.
Yeah. For every unit of growth a company achieves today, the number of new jobs created is drastically flatter than it was, say, 5 years ago. Companies are making more money, they are taking on more clients, and they are doing significantly more work. But the headcount just isn't rising to match it anymore.
Because instead of hiring 10 new analysts, they're buying an enterprise AI license. Right.
Exactly. They are shifting their capital toward automation instead of payroll.
So the jobs aren't vanishing overnight in some mass layoff event.
Yeah.
They're just quietly never being created in the first place.
Right.
That's the quiet drift. It's almost invisible.
It is. Routine digital work, so information retrieval, document summarization, basic software coding, all of that is just being absorbed into the silicon.
Wow.
It's this slow, steady drift that fundamentally alters the balance between capital and labor. And the survey explicitly warns that the historical back office model, which, relied entirely on scaling human labor to meet demand, is under severe structural threat.
Okay, so that is the macro picture. That's the 10,000-foot view. But I want to bring this down to the micro level, right down to the actual corporate reaction we are seeing every day.
Let's do it.
Because I see this playing out constantly. When executives read reports about this quiet drift, their immediate knee-jerk reaction is to launch a massive upskilling initiative.
Oh, yeah. The classic upskilling push.
Right. The HR department goes into absolute overdrive. They purchase thousands of seats for these generic AI training programs. They send out company-wide memos saying, we all need to become AI literate by Q3.
Right.
But meanwhile, down in the trenches, the line managers are just desperately trying to duct tape these AI tools into their daily operations just to meet the new artificially inflated output quotas the executives want.
And that disconnect right there is the exact reason why everyone is experiencing this historic level of burnout.
Tell me more about that.
Well, upskilling is a complete illusion if you do not actually redesign the work itself. I mean, think about the mechanics of what happens.
Go.
If you take a highly capable AI agent, something that can read 1,000 pages in a minute, and you just drop it into a pre-AI organizational chart, you don't liberate the humans. You end up giving them impossible jobs.
Okay, I have to push back on that a little bit. Why is it impossible? I mean, if I'm an analyst and you give me a tool that does all the reading for me, shouldn't my job just naturally get easier? I've been upskilled to use the tool, so I'm faster. Why am I suddenly drowning?
Because your official job description, your performance metrics, and your workflows haven't actually changed to accommodate this new reality. Let's look at the 3 deeply frustrating things humans end up doing in this broken duct tape scenario. First, they're still forced to do low-value work that the AI should already own.
Like what?
Like, because the process hasn't been structurally updated to let the AI take over fully, the human is still manually moving data from one legacy system to another just to feed the AI.
So they're basically a glorified data funnel for the robot.
Exactly. Second, they're endlessly correcting bad AI outputs. The hallucinations, the weird formatting errors, the, missed context.
Oh, the hallucinations are the worst.
Right. And nobody in the organization formally owns the AI's quality control, so the human just absorbs it as extra unacknowledged work.
All right, so instead of doing my actual analytical work, I'm now just playing editor to a really fast, sometimes drunk intern.
That is exactly what it feels like. And the third issue is actually the most damaging one.
What's that?
Because the AI is speeding up all the basic routine tasks, the overall volume of work flowing through the system just explodes.
Right, of course. Faster processing means more volume.
And with that volume comes a massive concentrated wave of complex judgment calls and risk escalations, things the AI simply cannot handle. Suddenly, humans are absorbing 10 times the amount of high-stress decision-making on top of their normal duties. They're getting all the hard stuff at a higher volume.
It's like, it's like buying a robotic sous chef for a restaurant kitchen.
I like this. Go on.
Let's say this robot can chop onions at 100 miles an hour.
Right.
Which sounds incredible on paper.
Yeah.
The restaurant owner thinks, great, we're going to serve 10 times as many meals tonight. But if the human head chefs still have to physically inspect every single piece of diced onion before it goes into the pan, Because nobody actually trusts the robot? You haven't sped up the kitchen at all. You've just created a massive, catastrophic onion bottleneck at the chef's station.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize the mechanism of the failure. The kitchen's workflow was never designed to handle the velocity of that robotic sous chef.
Right.
You can't just send the head chef to a Tuesday afternoon seminar on how to work with robots and call it upskilling.
Yeah, that does nothing for the bottleneck.
If you don't fundamentally redesign how the kitchen operates, like who checks what, when things move to the stove, what the robot is actually allowed to cook unsupervised, the entire system breaks.
It just rattles itself to pieces.
Exactly. The routine work speeds up, but the judgment work piles up in all the wrong places. And who absorbs that pileup? The middle manager.
Always the middle manager.
They spend all day reviewing outputs and absorbing accountability for a system they didn't even design, leading to the exact burnout you mentioned at the start of the deep dive.
So, if upskilling is an illusion and headcount is no longer the right metric for growth, how do we actually find the onion bottleneck?
Right.
Let's say I'm an operator listening to this right now. I'm running a department. My team is completely exhausted, but the board is breathing down my neck, wanting, more AI adoption, more efficiency. What is my first move tomorrow morning?
This is where the operational blueprints in our sources provide a very specific, highly tactical intervention. You have to locate the structural rot in your workflows, and to do that, you execute the 48-hour diagnostic move.
The 48-hour diagnostic move, I love the framing of that. 48 hours? It implies a ruthless urgency.
It has to be urgent.
We're not talking about hiring a consulting firm for a 6-month discovery phase,
Right.
where they just interview everyone and make a massive slide deck that no one reads.
No, a 6-month review is a recipe for operational paralysis right now. The technology is moving way too fast for that. The 48-hour diagnostic is about isolating the problem immediately. You do not try to fix the whole company at once. That's a huge mistake. You pick one single, large, high-volume, white-collar function.
Give me an example of the right kind of function to target for this.
You want something with a lot of routine cognitive work. So an L1 customer support desk, meaning your tier 1 frontline customer service that handles the initial wave of inquiries.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or a weekly financial reporting team.
All right.
Or even basic marketing content operations. You isolate that one function. Then you sit the leadership of that specific team down in a room, shut the door, and you demand the answers to 4 very specific questions.
Let's walk through these 4 questions because they are deceptively simple but incredibly sharp. Question 1. What are the top 5 workflows by time spent?
Right.
And our sources are very clear here. We're not asking for job titles.
No, absolutely not. If you ask a manager what their team does and they say, well, we have 12 customer service representatives, they have failed the question.
Yeah, that tells you nothing.
You don't want job titles. You need the actual workflows. You want to hear our top workflow is password reset escalations, which takes 30% of our time. Number 2 is refund policy negotiations, which takes 25%.
They need to know the actual work.
Exactly. If a leader does not know exactly where the time is going, they are managing a fiction.
Okay, so that's question 1. Question 2. For each of those specific top 5 workflows, what percentage is already AI assisted?
Yes. And this naturally leads right into question 3, which is the absolute trap door.
Oh, I love this.
Who actually owns that agent or tool?
Brutal.
Right. When the AI hallucinates a refund policy and promises a customer $10,000, whose bonus is mathematically on the line for that failure.
I can already imagine the uncomfortable silence in the room on that one. Everyone just looking at the floor.
It gets very quiet very fast.
Finally, question 4. What metrics differentiate a top performer from a medium performer on your team today? Are you still just measuring the raw number of tickets closed?
And here's the thing. What is truly revealing is not just the answers to these questions, but the behavioral reaction in the room when you ask them.
What do you mean?
In the vast majority of organizations today, you will not get crisp data. You will get vague, highly political deflections. Or you will get answers that, they only exist in a glossy executive PowerPoint presentation, but they are completely disconnected from the actual reality of the floor.
Right. The manager might proudly say, oh, absolutely, 40% of our workflow is AI assisted. We are very tech forward.
Right.
But then you hit them with question 3, who owns the failure rate?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone suddenly finds their shoes fascinating. Or the line manager points at the IT department because they bought the software, and then the IT department points back at the line manager because Well, they operate the software.
Exactly. It's an endless loop of unaccountability. And that gap, the distance between the confidence of their vague answers and the lack of data-backed reality, that gap is your organization's work design deficit.
Work design deficit.
Yes. If you cannot answer those 4 questions with verifiable operational data, you do not have an AI problem. You have an operating model problem.
Wow.
The surface looks organized, but the diagnostic proves the system underneath is melting.
I want you, the listener, to really internalize this for a second. Think about your own team or the department you report into. If your boss walked in tomorrow morning, shut the door, and asked you to list your top 5 workflows by time spent, and exactly who owns the risk for the AI handoffs in each of them, could you do it?
Most people can't.
Could you pull the data to prove it? Because if the answer is no, you are looking at your bottleneck right there.
And recognizing that deficit is a terrifying but necessary moment of clarity. Because frankly, the market is not going to wait for you to figure it out.
Okay, so the 48-hour diagnostic exposes the invisible mess. We found the bottleneck. But seeing the mess isn't the same as cleaning it up.
No, it's just step 1.
Once we have the inventory of what's actually broken, how do we fix it? The next step in these elite operational blueprints is to physically map the territory. We have to completely redraw the boundaries of human and machine work.
And this requires a massive intellectual leap.
How so?
Well, most executives still believe that the core asset of their business is their people, right? Their AI-ready employees.
Yeah, that's the whole upskilling pitch.
But as we established with the upskilling illusion, an AI-ready employee in a broken workflow is useless. The true defensible asset of the future business is a portfolio of clearly defined workflows. To build that, you have to dismantle the old map entirely.
Let's get into the mechanics of how we dismantle and rebuild this map. Step 1 is workflow inventory and decomposition.
Decomposition, yes.
You take those top 5 workflows you finally identified in the diagnostic. Let's stick with the example of a weekly financial reporting cycle. You don't look at weekly reporting as one big monolithic block of work anymore, do you? You have to slice it into granular, microscopic tasks.
Exactly. Process decomposition. You break that one workflow down into its smallest operational components. Let's really look at the weekly report.
Let's do it.
Component 1, data retrieval from the servers. Component 2, classification and cleaning of that data. Component 3, drafting the initial text summary of the trends. Component 4, exception handling, like what do we actually do when the European division's data is just missing this week?
Which happens all the time, right?
Component 5, internal negotiation with the sales department over conflicting revenue numbers. And finally, Component 6, executive approval and sign-off.
So why do we have to go down to that extremely granular level? Why can't we just say, okay, the AI does the data stuff, the human does the writing stuff?
Because if you keep the work in large, vague chunks like that, you inevitably create the onion bottleneck we talked about.
Right.
You have to isolate the exact moment where the work changes character, which leads directly to step 2, allocation based on consequence.
Our sources are absolutely adamant about this point. You do not decide what the AI does and what the human does based on some vague philosophical corporate ideology about being human-centric or tech-forward.
No, that's a trap.
You don't do it based on what feels right. You allocate based on cold, hard consequence and risk.
If you want to understand how a company survives the next decade, it happens in this exact step. When you look at an individual micro-task, you must evaluate it against very strict criteria.
What are we asking here?
Is this task low context and highly repetitive? What is the actual quantifiable financial or reputational cost if an error occurs right here? Does this specific task require tacit knowledge?
Tacit knowledge. Meaning what exactly?
The kind of nuanced gut instinct that a senior employee builds over 20 years of navigating company politics. Knowing who to CC on an email, knowing when a client is bluffing.
An AI doesn't know that.
Exactly. And crucially, does the client or the regulatory body, legally or emotionally, expect a human being to make a final judgment call?
So you filter every granular task through those criteria, and you execute step 3, drawing the zones. You sort every single piece of the workflow into one of 3 distinct buckets. Let's start with the easiest one to understand, the agent-only zone.
Yes, the agent-only zone. This is strictly for mechanical, low-context, high-repetition work. Going back to our reporting example, this is the data retrieval, the initial classification, the basic drafting.
Okay, the grunt work.
But the critical shift here is in the word only.
Only.
The AI is not assisting a human here. The AI owns it entirely. A human being should not even be allowed to look at this work unless a specific mathematical error threshold is breached.
Wait. If the human isn't looking at it, aren't we just begging for hallucinations to slip through? That sounds incredibly risky.
If you are relying on a human to manually read every single data pull to catch hallucinations, you are back to the sous chef problem.
Oh, right. The onion bottleneck.
Exactly. You handle hallucinations in the agent-only zone through automated verification loops and strict confidence scoring, not human eyeballs.
So the machines check the machines.
Yes. The human only intervenes if the system flags an anomaly it mathematically cannot resolve.
Okay, understood. Then we move to the opposite end of the spectrum, the human only, or human critical zone. And this is where the economic survey actually provides some really profound insight into what is truly immune to AI.
It's a fascinating section of the survey.
It defines human critical work as anything rooted in empathy, ethical reasoning, trust, and complex social dynamics.
Yes, the survey explicitly lists out physical and social jobs that are structurally insulated from AI disruption. Nursing, elder care, mental health counseling, public health outreach.
Jobs that require a real human connection.
Right. It even highlights hands-on trades like plumbing, electrical work, or advanced tool specialists because those roles operate in highly unpredictable, unstructured physical environments that require constant on-the-fly adaptability.
But obviously, we're talking about white-collar office environments here. I don't have a plumber in my finance department. How do those immune characteristics translate to a corporate workflow?
In the white-collar world, those exact same immune characteristics manifest as relationship handling, deep domain judgment, and trust-bearing decisions.
Give me a concrete example from our reporting scenario.
Let's go back to our weekly reporting workflow. If the data reveals a massive shortfall, and you have to get on a video call with a furious major client to explain why you missed the deliverable, an AI cannot rebuild that trust.
Oh, definitely not.
It cannot read the micro-expressions in the room during a high-stakes negotiation. It cannot make a nuanced ethical call on a compliance gray area where the rules conflict with each other.
Right.
Those micro-tasks are sorted strictly, 100%, into the human critical zone.
Okay, so the map is starting to make sense. We have the agent-only zone, humming along at light speed doing the road data work, and we have the human critical zone where people are doing deep, empathetic, strategic thinking. But hold on, let's play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
What about the space in between? What happens when a workflow requires both? Let's say the AI agent drafts a piece of software code that's agent-only, right? But it fails a security compliance test, and a human engineer has to step in to fix the logic. That's the hybrid zone. How is this fundamentally different from just standard quality assurance? Isn't this just like checking an intern's work?
That is the exact trap most organizations fall into, and it is exactly why their systems fail.
Why?
The hybrid zone is not just standard QA. The difference is velocity, volume, and cognitive load.
Right, because the AI is so fast.
Exactly. When you check an intern's work, you understand the context of how the intern thinks, and they produce work at human speed. You get maybe one report a week from an intern.
Yeah.
When you are operating in the hybrid zone with an AI, the machine is throwing massive volumes of contextless output at you at a speed you cannot naturally process.
100 reports a minute.
Yes. If you do not have explicit written rules for exactly how the handoff happens, who owns the output quality in that specific zone, and exactly what the protocol is for failure recovery, the system immediately breaks down.
Because if the rules aren't explicitly defined, it just defaults back to the human.
Always. If nobody formally owns the hybrid zone failure, the manager absorbs it by default.
Right.
They become the human patch for a badly deployed algorithm. They spend their weekends manually reviewing those AI-generated reports because they don't trust the output, but their name is still on the line for the final product.
So, executing this mapping exercise, drawing clear, hard lines between agent-only, human-critical, and hybrid zones, it gives you absolute clarity on where the work actually belongs.
Yes.
But here is the massive catch. A map is just a conceptual piece of paper. It is entirely useless if the people inside your organization are still operating with their old job titles, their old incentives, and their old performance reviews.
This is where it all falls apart if you're not careful.
And that brings us to what I think is the most disruptive part of this entire deep dive. A phased execution plan for role redesign.
You are exactly right. Redesigning the roles is where the theoretical map has to survive contact with operational reality. And to survive, you have to completely shift the management paradigm.
Shift it how?
Historically, employees were managed as owners of tasks. Your job was to do X, then do Y, then do Z. In this new model, we must shift workers to being owners of workflows.
Let's make this incredibly concrete. Let's walk through phase one, rescoping the role.
Mm.
Suppose I am a mid-level data analyst. You just spent a week mapping my workflow.
Mm.
You've decided that AI agents are now doing 80% of my mechanical data sorting and initial drafting in the agent-only zone.
Okay, scenario established.
I cannot just keep my old job description with a little bullet point lazily tacked onto the bottom that says oversees AI tools.
No, absolutely not, because your daily operational reality has fundamentally changed. If you try to just oversee the AI while attempting to maintain your old identity as the person who physically writes the report, you will drown in the volume.
Because I'll be trying to read everything it writes.
Exactly. Your role must be explicitly formally rescoped. You are no longer the manual creator of the report. You are the architect and governor of the reporting workflow.
So what does my Tuesday look like in this new role?
Your new role focuses entirely on the edges of the system. You own the exceptions. When the AI encounters unstructured data it cannot process, or when a data source breaks, you step in.
Okay, I handle the weird stuff.
Right. You maintain the quality thresholds of the hybrid zone. You handle the complex client negotiations when the data tells a story that the client desperately does not want to hear.
The human critical stuff.
Yes. And most importantly, you spend a significant portion of your week actively improving the workflow architecture itself. You are tuning the system, adjusting the prompts, refining the logic. You are managing the factory, not churning the gears on the assembly line.
I love that distinction.
Yeah.
Managing the factory, not churning the gears. But if you change the fundamental scope of my role to that level, you absolutely must move to phase two, which is changing the metrics.
It's non-negotiable.
Because if my HR department is still measuring me on how fast I turn the gears, I'm going to ignore the factory. I'm going to game the system.
This is the death knell for most corporate AI initiatives. If you measure people using pre-AI metrics in an AI-driven workflow, you will incentivize exactly the wrong behavior. You will end up rewarding noise, busy work, and manual intervention where absolutely none is needed.
Give me an example of how this breaks in reality. If I'm managing that L1 customer support desk we talked about earlier, my primary metric for the last 10 years has been number of tickets closed per day per agent. Are you telling me that metric is dead?
It is worse than dead. It is actively harmful.
Actively harmful. How?
Think about it. If you measure an agent solely on personal manual ticket closure, they will fight the AI because the AI is stealing all their easy tickets.
Oh, right. The AI is closing the password resets instantly so the human's numbers drop.
Exactly. They look like a low performer now. The operational blueprint suggests a complete evolution of metrics. You don't measure individual manual effort anymore. You measure the efficiency of the human-machine system as a whole.
So what are the specific new metrics we should be looking at?
You measure cases closed per FTE, and FTE meaning full-time equivalent, standard corporate shorthand, for one employee, but you measure it with AI support factored in. You are evaluating the total throughput of the workflow they manage, not just their fingers on the keyboard.
That makes total sense.
You measure the error rates of the combined system. You look deeply at escalation quality.
What is escalation quality? Define that.
When a ticket finally breaches the agent-only zone and lands in the human-critical zone, how quickly and effectively does the human resolve it? Since they only get the hardest problems now, their resolution time will naturally be longer per ticket, but the quality of that resolution must be flawless.
Right, because they aren't bogged down with the easy stuff anymore. And the blueprints also mention measuring cycle time, rework burden, and throughput under exception load. Explain that last one, because throughput under exception load sounds like something an engineer measures on a server, not a human being.
Well, in a way, we are doing systems engineering here. Throughput under exception load measures the resilience of your team.
Resilient.
When the system breaks, say your website goes down, and you get a massive spike of angry customers, which the AI cannot pacify because they demand a human apology, how much volume can your human team process while maintaining quality? It measures your team's ability to handle the hardest, most emotionally taxing work when the volume spikes. These are systems engineering metrics, not traditional HR performance review metrics.
Which points to a massive, quiet power shift happening inside these enterprises right now.
Yeah.
Historically, control over the workforce, the job descriptions, and the performance bands.
Totally.
That was held tightly by human resource.
Yes, very tightly.
They ran the generic training programs and defined what a senior analyst was.
Yeah.
But as this transition happens, That control is shifting directly to the operational leaders who actually design these workflows.
Yes, it has to. The CHRO, the Chief Human Resources Officer, and the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, they can no longer operate in separate silos. They must fuse.
That's a big shift.
Organizational design expertise must be embedded directly into the daily operations. The leaders who can look at a mess, run the 48-hour diagnostic, map the agent, human, and hybrid zones, and establish these new systems engineering metrics. Those leaders will become the new talent power centers in the business.
Wow.
Generic HR upskilling programs are going to be completely displaced by hard operational workflow design.
That makes total sense. If the real bottleneck is work design, then the people who can design work hold the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
But let's pause and inject some reality here.
Okay.
If I'm a COO listening to this, I'm probably sweating right now. I'm thinking this sounds intellectually flawless. But I run a global division with 5,000 employees. I cannot just rip up 5,000 job descriptions overnight. If I draw the hybrid zone handoffs wrong, or if my new metrics fail, I could literally crash the entire company's revenue operations in a week.
It's a very valid fear.
How does a real-world operator actually execute this and prove it works to their board without betting the whole farm?
You do not bet the whole farm. That is the genius of these operational blueprints. They introduce a concept called an asymmetric bet.
Asymmetric bet.
Yes, this is how you build long-term system defensibility without blowing up your current quarter. You do not try to mandate a company-wide AI rollout. You do not redesign the whole company at once.
You isolate the risk.
Exactly. You find one workflow, just one discrete, measurable workflow, and you redesign it end-to-end based on every single principle we've discussed today.
Just one.
Just one. You run the diagnostic, you decompose the tasks, you assign the mechanical high-volume work explicitly to the agents, you focus the human team entirely on judgment, exception handling, and stakeholder interaction, and you officially, on paper, rescope that one specific team's roles and metrics around that new reality.
And then you measure it ruthlessly against the legacy system.
You measure it against the old way with absolute precision. If you can demonstrate to the board that this newly designed workflow produces higher throughput, better output quality, and crucially results in fewer burned-out employees,
You have a winner.
you haven't just run a cute pilot program. You have created a highly valuable, perfectly transferable operational template. You have proven the physics of the new model in reality.
Right.
And once you have that proven template, taking it to the next workflow and the workflow after that becomes significantly easier and carries almost zero political risk.
So let's pull all the way back. What does this all mean for the long-term survival of the business? We started this deep dive by talking about the economic survey and the existential threat to the traditional PBIS sector, this quiet drift where the old models are buckling.
Yes.
If an organization actually listens to this, if they execute the diagnostic, map the zones based on consequence, radically redesign the roles, and scale these asymmetric sets, where do they actually end up in 5 years?
They end up operating a fundamentally different and vastly mathematically superior economic engine. There is specific insight in these operational blueprints about how executives need to view their payroll, and it is profound.
Okay, let's hear it.
A company's wage bill is not just a financial line item on a spreadsheet. A wage bill is essentially a frozen organizational chart of yesterday's processes.
Wait, say that again. A frozen org chart of yesterday's processes? I love that. Let's play with that idea for a second. So when I look at my payroll, I am literally paying a historical tax on how we did things in 2019. I'm paying for the structure of the horse-drawn carriage.
Exactly. You are paying for the inefficiencies of the past. Now, if an executive looks at that wage bill and treats AI purely as a blunt headcount reduction tool, if they just start firing people because an AI can type a summary faster,
Right.
they might get a short-term margin boost.
Right. The quarterly earnings will look fantastic.
And Wall Street might applaud for 3 months, but they are going to inherit a massive, catastrophic long-term quality problem.
Because they just threw people overboard to make the carriage lighter, but they never actually redesigned the vehicle. The remaining humans will just burn out trying to manage the chaotic, un-QA'd output of the AI.
Precisely. They will collapse under the weight of the invisible hybrid zone. But if you treat AI as a mandate to fundamentally rewrite the workflows and the decision rights as we've mapped out today, you create a highly defensible operating logic. You stop paying the tax on yesterday's processes and you build a superior talent mix tailored for tomorrow.
And this connects right back to the economic survey's final warning about market repricing, doesn't it?
It is the only way a company survives that repricing.
How so?
The survey's data tells us that routine mechanical roles are going to become rapidly commoditized. Anyone, anywhere in the world, can buy an AI agent to do basic data retrieval. The value of that work is going to zero.
Because it's infinitely replicable.
Right, but at the exact same time, differentiated judgment-heavy roles, the people who actually understand how to manage complex hybrid workflows, who can navigate fragile client trust, who can handle severe ethical escalations, those people are going to become incredibly scarce and extraordinarily expensive.
Because every company in the world will be fighting over the few people who actually know how to manage the factory, rather than just churn the gears.
Yes. The companies that execute this workflow redesign first will insulate themselves from this brutal market shift. They won't be trapped overpaying for routine work, and because they've optimized their systems, they will actually have the budget and the proper organizational structure to attract the judgment-heavy talent they desperately need.
They stop selling a generic, labor-based capability, and they start selling a mathematically superior system.
Exactly. It's an entirely new way to operate.
That is a massive paradigm shift.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap the journey we've been on today, because we have covered some heavy operational ground.
We really have.
We started with a macro warning from the economic survey, this quiet drift, where output is growing, but traditional job creation is flattening out, proving that the old linear scale is dead. We saw how the typical corporate response of just buying generic upskilling software is a complete illusion.
A dangerous illusion.
Right. It leads straight to white-collar burnout, because dropping a high-speed agent into a broken workflow just creates a massive bottleneck of unmanaged risk.
We then laid out the practical, mechanical fix. It all starts with the 48-hour diagnostic move to expose your organization's work design deficit. You find the truth by asking those 4 critical questions.
Identify the top workflows, the AI percentage, the owner of the agent, and the real metrics.
Yes. And once you expose the deficit, you map the territory. Decomposing workflows into granular tasks and explicitly allocating them into agent-only, human-critical, and hybrid zones based entirely on consequence and risk.
And most importantly, you cannot stop at the map. You have to follow through with a phased execution plan for role redesign. You have to formally change the job descriptions and build new systems engineering metrics to measure throughput and resilience. You shift your people from being owners of tasks to owners of workflows.
And you prove it all works by making an asymmetric bet.
Yes. Redesigning just one workflow end-to-end to build a defensible, mathematically superior system that protects you from the coming market repricing.
It is incredibly hard work, and, it requires breaking a lot of legacy corporate habits, but it is the only work that matters right now for operational leaders.
As always, we want to leave you with a final thought, something to really mull over as you look at your own calendar or analyze your own team structure when you log in tomorrow morning.
We spend so much of our energy worrying about whether an AI is going to take our seat at the table. We read the panic-inducing headlines, we obsess over the new tech releases. But if your organization is still running on a pre-AI workflow map, the table itself is structurally unsound. So ask yourself tomorrow, are you currently being managed and measured as an empowered owner of a workflow, or are you just functioning as a stressed-out human patch for a badly deployed algorithm?